Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's panel. Today, we'll be hearing from our 4 amazing panelists who will be speaking on the intersection of cosmetic and beauty and 3D printing. Before we get started, I would like to let everyone know that the general chat is open, as well as the Q&A section if you would like to hear our panelists talk about any specific topics. To start off, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Sanjana, and I will be co-moderating today's event. I'm a rising first-year student at the University of California, Los Angeles, and I am the head of career development at Women in 3D Printing Next Gen. At Women in 3D Printing, I organize the Next Gen events, and I run the AMA Career Series on YouTube. And now I'll pass it off to our other co-moderator, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I will be co-moderating today. My name is Ashley Alleyne. I work as a 3D printer for Tapestry, which is the parent company of Coach Kate Spade and Stuart Weitzman. I'm also a 3D printing design entrepreneur in residence at the MIX lab at Montclair State University, where I make 3D printed jewelry along with a lot of other things.
Thank you, Ashley. And Brianne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Debauge, in charge of digital transformation for the packaging side in L'Oréal. And our topic is to reduce our time to market and accelerate our sustainability transformation in the design of our packaging.
Thank you, Anne. And Brianne, would you like to go now?
Hi, I'm Brianne. I work for Estée Lauder companies, helping to prototype different projects throughout the company. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We use prototyping and 3D printing for developing projects, tooling, and sometimes appearance models or display models. So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brianne. And Anouk, could you go next?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anouk Wipprecht. I'm a Dutch fashion tech designer, so I combine fashion and technology. So I work a lot with microcontrollers, robotics, and sensors in my designs, and I use 3D printing to design these designs myself or in collaboration. So I'm using a lot of SLS 3D printing and TPUs and everything that I can get my hands on almost. So I'm an artist and a designer.
Thank you, Anouk. And I will pass it off to Ashley to start us off.
Great. So I'm so excited for this. So we'll kick it off with the first question. How did everyone enter the 3D printing and beauty industry? And we have a similar background so we got into 3D printing. So I'll start with Brianne, do you want to go first?
Sure, sorry, I couldn't really hear what you were saying. Okay, so how did I get into 3D printing and beauty industry? Actually, is your mic on? I can hear you, but there's a lot of like feedback noise, and I don't know, maybe if we could just turn your mic off or when. Because I'm not really sure what's happening. I'm getting a lot of weird noise. Is anybody else getting weird noise?
I think there was a bit of feedback for a second. So if the panelists could just keep their mic off while they're not speaking, just to make sure we don't have too much interference.
Yeah, cool. It's much better now, so I'll just start over. But yeah, the main answer to how I entered the industry with beauty and 3D printing is mostly networking and just the extra things I was doing outside of my previous job that in efforts to like build my career. Because I am still just on the 3D printing machine operational side of things. And then the beauty industry part of it sort of fell into my lap, because like I probably shouldn't admit this, but like when I was told about the job at Estée Lauder, I didn't really know even like what Estée Lauder was. And then I was applying for the job. I learned it was makeup and cosmetics, but then it wasn't until later I realized it was a position that services all Estée Lauder owned companies. And then it really hit me just how huge of an opportunity it was. And it came my way as a result of like a combination of what I knew in my 3D printing experience and who I knew through networking, and of course, just the luck of being in New York City. But basically, my role at the moment is running a prototyping lab that produces like various 3D models. And it's essentially like a sort of internal 3D printing service bureau at the company. And Estée uses 3D printing for other applications outside of just what I do. So the use of additive goes beyond even what I can talk about. And it's something that is growing and being developed more and more by the company. And I'm learning now and becoming really passionate now more about larger companies, not just in beauty and fashion, that are developing similar labs and departments, and more about sort of just like this emerging type of space and this type of career that it's just like something that I feel so super lucky to be a part of, because it's almost like it just kind of happened to me by accident, just from like loving what I do. And so super honored to also just share my story with the next generation of people like me who may be interested in this type of work as well.
That was so great. Okay, cool. Anne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, if you want. So, in my previous job, I was in charge of innovation packaging. We use 3D printing with partners outside. And in fact, I share the opportunity to have in-house, to have a quicker prototype. And 3 years ago, when we began this program for digital transformation with new, the people said, yeah, you can take the job and help about old technology, 3D printing, virtual reality. Yeah, it's with this I began. So now the first 3D lab was running in US very good, and I pushed for the deployment. We have now 9 3D labs for mock-up, just only packaging mock-ups when you design a perfume, before to launch the glass mold to do it, or the injection mold for a compact case, or a lipstick pack. We check in the day with the in-house printer, because since 20 years we use outside, and we have the checking, and we deploy in plants. 23 plants now I've got 3D printer, FDM, to develop the format part, the pucks, for the filling of perfume, for example, or any tools. And we have 25 plants equipped. So total, we have 85 printer in-house to be more agile and help teams for creativity. Because on the day, you test your idea, and after you change, you modify. And it's really quick, and that's improve the way to innovate too, in addition of time to market reduce. That's with this digital transformation program, I jump on the 3D print professionally, because before I use at home with my kids. We have 2 printers at home. I'm doing some jewels and some toys and some decoration for the house. So that's the story.
Great. I really wish I had 85 3D printers. So, Anouk, do you want to go next?
Yes. Let me see if it's on. Yes. Perfect. Yeah, my story is pretty personal. I always used to create these designs using A and B components epoxy. So you're using the epoxies, you need to like really grind it out. There's a lot of dust that comes free, and I got really bad problems with my lungs in 2007, 2008. So I was looking in other ways to produce my designs. You were wearing like respirators, but still a lot of dust is involved when you're doing this manual. So in 2009 was the first time that in the University of Toronto, they had a 3D printer. So I printed a little piece for my Dare Droid dress with 2 collaborators. And then in 2011, my friend Rijn van der Mas, in the chat here, he took me to Materialize to look how I can really basically automate almost that to work with 3D printing companies instead. And I have been doing so ever since. A friend of mine, Niccolo Cassasi, it's in architects. He was using Maya as software program. So that is how I got into using 3D modeling software, doing collaborations and working with 3D printing partners.
Thank you, Anouk. That's been extremely inspiring. And the next question that I wanted to direct towards our panelists is, what are your takes on sustainability and scalability in 3D printing, specifically in the beauty industry? And Anne, could you start us off? Sorry, not sure if you heard that last part, but Anne, do you think you could kick off? Yeah, I think, perfect.
About sustainability, because that Kate just, so we work and we have commitment very high for 25 to have all our packaging, 100% of our packaging refillable, reusable, compostable, or recyclable. And about the materials today, for FDM, it's okay. For prototype, we now use our waste in our plant, L-Safe bottle PET. We green with a partner, and we use it like a wire for prototyping when it's possible, because the color is quite middle red and brown. So already we implement this circular economy because the mindset is really in all the field of the company to be in circular economy. But for the finished goods, so we already launched 2 perfume, limited edition perfume for Lancôme and Viktor and Rolf. Today, for mass production, unfortunately, the material available, like on HP machine, it's not recycled, and it's not recyclable for consumers. It's only industrial recycling. So our commitment for L'Oréal Group, it's really for 25. I explained, and 30, it's 100% recycled and or bio-based, recycled plastic or bio-based plastic. So the field and the landscape of 3D printing on mass prod today, it's not, the maturity is not enough. So we are happy to discover a new player for the future, because the short term we can have only fast prototyping. Good for sustainability, but not mass production.
It's super exciting to see how recyclable plastics could be the future of the industry. And Brianne, would you like to expand on this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a conversation that you get into a lot with 3D printing, because people know it's manufacturing, and then they just immediately in their heads will compare it to mass production and injection molding, which is like, you know, understandable, but also I think that there's maybe a little bit of lack of education on 3D printing and like what's possible with it. Sustainability can mean a lot of things, and so when I hear that word, I think the question is like, how does 3D printing end-use parts make your supply chain less destructive economically and environmentally? And when that question is then pushed further into the direction of scalability, sometimes it's just like, maybe I feel like it's just maybe not the right question to be asking about how we can use 3D printing. Because a major thing to mention in 3D printing especially like in terms of fashion and custom designs, is like you can make one of a kind parts. And it takes a millisecond sometimes to injection mold a part, where that injection molded part also costs 2 cents or less to produce. And you'll just never be able to make a custom one of a kind product that fits that model and that idea. So, and on top of that, you know, with 3D printing, you have this opportunity for geometries and designs and functions that you'll never be able to achieve in a traditional way. And so sometimes it's like we have this thing that already exists and we compare 3D printing to that. And it's like, I almost feel like we're trying to like, I don't know, this is like a weird analogy, but it's like you have that like baby toy where you have those blocks that are a certain shape, and then the hole is like a square, but the block is a star. It's like we're trying to shove this like already existing model into this thing that just doesn't fit inside of. And like I personally think that just like the expectations of 3D printing, where people want it to be 2 cents per part and then still have the benefits that 3D printing offers. It's just going to take time for people who are shooting for the stars to land on the moon and become more realistic and educated about what's possible. And then once that happens, like, I believe we can change the foundation of manufacturing and how the world works with 3D printing. Because to me, like, my take is like we should start talking way more outside of the box and way more truthfully about the future, because the thing that is unstable is this pressure to have to make hundreds of millions and billions of parts. And we're trying to fit this tremendously innovative, opportunity opening technology into a system that inherently produces so much waste and environmental destruction, and making mass production less destructive sometimes feels to me it's like, I don't know, trying to make like the diet version of pollution. And I just think there are so many more opportunities that 3D printing can present that can do way better than that, especially if the products that you're making have this like need to be like custom made for people, where every single one of them can be different. And my gut feeling is that like scalability is like not that sustainable. Like there are two separate things that exist on a sliding scale, where like the more something scales to like making 1 billion per part, the less sustainable it is, and vice versa. And that's why the question is such a challenge. But I think there's like a tougher conversation to have that challenges the concept of scaling in order to prioritize sustainability. And the 3D printing industry is such a great place for that conversation to start happening, because in theory, like with the right application in the future, we'll only need to make exactly as many things as we sell with so much less waste. And yeah, it's going to cost more than 2 cents per part to produce, but you know, the part can be custom made for you. And then there's low volume production projects that are incredible projects that can stand up on their own. And you have this another amazing opportunity for like this in-between stage between prototyping and mass production, where to produce something, you don't have to just immediately go overseas to a supplier and make an injection mold tool and make, you know, hundreds of thousands of parts, and it's really expensive. Now it can have this like step in between potentially that can be super powerful for small businesses and startups. And I just think that like there's so much more of like a bigger open conversation that we can have outside of the box of just like, you know, well, this is what we can do with injection molding. How can we make 3D printing do that? When there's just so much other opportunity that is presented by the technology that should be embraced more and like looked at for what it is and what it can offer.
That's a very interesting take, and I love your analogy with the baby toys. And Anouk, would you like to add on to this question as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, first of all, I agree about sustainability with Anne and Brianne, especially about the circular design process, and also like what I always say, sometimes you're creating a lot of like waste, right? That's what we're talking about here a lot. So from the engineering side, like typing engineer your design super well. So basically, in the end, you only need to print out what you really need to, and constructed it in certain ways, like look a little bit longer at your design in the computer sometimes than printing it out, because in the beginning, when we had access to 3D printers, we just started to print anything that we could, right? And it might be a try, it's just to see and to check the possibilities. But you're creating just a lot of ways, sort of, so the more you can look into more into the engineering before you're printing, you can realize, okay, there's already a lot that you can solve without having it physically in front of you almost. So that's more in regards to like prototyping, for example.
I feel like I've really been illuminated by all of you. Wow. Okay, so next question. So what are some tips and tricks or advice in terms of using 3D printing for design and prototyping? And I'll start with you.
So some tips, it's a secret. We can share with the of course, with pleasure. So today the technology the people all around here share it's open the new field. Now it's software and the human mindset which is the limit, because everybody, the designer, the engineer, are now the old way of design. So the first thing is to think out of the box, to help our designer and engineer to use new software to help this generative design, lattice structure, which open new field, because they're used to design with a way of injection or metal deforming. And now the limit is more human than technology. So it's really to focus now on the human training, software to go outside of the box, and on the process of design to focus on functionality, consumer-centric, and not as usual as the other step of the development.
Because I feel like the same thing is happening in the fashion industry as well. People are learning all these new 3D skills and onboarding all this new technology. And I've just been getting into generative design and lattice structures, and wow, that is just next level. So thank you for that. Anouk, I'm gonna go to you.
Sorry, there's some latency with the microphone. I mean, if you're getting into all of this, look what kind of like software is interesting for you, which can be like an industrial kind of software. It can be other things like Rhino or Maya or any of the Autodesk suites. Or if you want to look into free software, you can look into Blender, which is an open source software created by a Dutch person. So you can go to the Blender site and download that all for free, and just start to play around with it. I think when you start to go into the 3D printing of these designs, create a really strong base, so depending on really your machine, that it can be as stable if you print it out, whether that's SLS or you have a desktop printer and all of that stuff. Start to design things that have a really strong base, and from there on you can go more into 3D printing out and all of that stuff.
Those programs are like super awesome, and I really appreciate recommending Blender because it is free. So Brianne, I'm gonna go to you next.
I second like what Anne and Anouk also said, especially with learning how to use designs that are really for 3D printing and something that only 3D printing can make. Is a great place to start, designing for 3D printing projects. What can you do with the machine you have that other machines can't do? And like this, I don't know, the first thing that came to mind with this question is like, I think depending on the project, to just try to spend more time with your files and with file prep, so that you'll minimize what you have to do in post. Don't be lazy and just send a part to a machine. Learn your machine, learn the limitations of the machine and how to design for that machine, and check your files. Like, if it's going to take you 5 hours to remove the support material on a part, take an hour and a half and figure out how to print it differently beforehand, and just be preventative and learn the good practice measures up front with DFAM. And you'll thank yourself later, because if you force yourself to do that every single time you print something, you'll eventually learn and gain so much knowledge and develop so much skill in DFAM and even design consulting if what you're printing is for somebody else who has a specific need, but you're also taking the printer and the materials and the cost into, and the post-process into consideration up front. So that would be my main piece of advice here.
Putting straight up facts, because when I first started 3D printing, I wasn't, really, I didn't know how to really design parts for 3D printing. And when I tell you, sometimes when I was post-processing, I was like, why did I do this to myself? So yeah, I totally agree. That was super great advice. So Sopiea, I'm not sure if you heard the question, but the question was, what are some tips and tricks and advice in terms of using 3D printing for design and prototyping?
Well, I'm sorry, I was just having technical difficulties. Sorry for that. I'm just going to preface the conversation by saying I'm not the 3D printing expert. We do have our 3D printing engineers. So that is a question that I will, I'm not really equipped to answer. And the reason being is we're actually building an entire new 3D printing system. And the reason for that is because currently 3D printing is not able to use multi materials. And that's the type of things that you need in skincare products. You actually need to be allowed for multi-phase emulsions. So I think it was last year that Dr. Juan in UC Davis, he actually created a 3D droplet multi-phase emulsion printer. So we're on the same track.
Sopiea, and the next question that I do want to direct at our panelists is more about how someone who's interested in entering beauty and 3D printing can go about doing that. Are there any specific skills that you feel they should develop in order to be successful? And I'll actually direct this to Anouk first.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. If it's specific to, for example, the work that I do, working with the body needs comfort, even if you're making bigger pieces like I have behind me, for example, the spider dress. Things still need to be comfortable, so it needs to be light, it needs to be comfortable, you need to have movements. The body has a dynamic. If you have the skin, pH, you have certain things like sweat and moisture, and also outside and environmental things that are happening. So especially from if you're looking to 3D print things on the body, you need to take a lot of things in consideration. I come from a traditional fashion design background, and then I got into robotics and electronics when I was 7 years old. So I'm used to doing so, because I come from fashion design, couture, tailoring, a lot of things about the body, so that really helped me to create these things that I have around the body, which are not only 3D printed, but they're also robotic and but definitely, if you're printing for the body, you want to take care of pH things and all of that stuff. Almost you want to have a very breathable 3D printing material that we of course want to work towards. It's not there yet. But that's, of course, an ideal situation. Yeah, in my specific case, learn about the body and everything that has to do with that.
Interesting connection between the body and 3D printing, two fields you may not directly associate. And Brianne, would you like to talk about what skills you think are important in this industry?
Yeah, so for me, like I can't necessarily speak too much about getting into like the beauty industry. It's kind of like I've worked with 3D printing for several different companies that did different things for different industries, which is like what I love about 3D printing so much, because like that's kind of where my background is. And then I ended up in the beauty industry because there was an opportunity for me there. So like the specific like hard skills that I would advise developing if that type of work is interesting to you, just like to work with digital fabrication, not necessarily in the beauty industry specifically, but maybe like the hard skills is like learn as much as you can about any CAD software you can get your hands on, because it's good to have like your favorite go-to software that you like fly through and you just know it like the back of your hand. But so much of like my experience, it really helps to just also be like a 3D generalist, because the programs constantly keep changing, and oftentimes like if you're running some sort of 3D printing lab or service, you will be getting files from all different programs all the time, especially knowing the difference between like mesh modeling and B-rep modeling, parametric. There's just like so many different things. So just, you don't have to be overwhelmed and feel like you need to become an expert in every single one of them all at once, because I think a lot of times like people can just really get so overwhelmed so quickly with 3D printing because it's so huge. There's so many different technologies, so many programs. You can have your specialization, but it's good to just make an effort to also be just a generalist and keep up with what's happening in the world in 3D printing, even if it's not, you know, necessarily like the industry you want to work for in 3D printing. It's important to just be aware and know what's going on in the world with it, because you may just end up, you know, doing something else and you're a 3D printer. So there's just so much opportunity out there for you to just jump on board with all these really cool things happening in the world. So just be aware, and I guess that's the advice. Be more of a generalist, especially on the software end of things.
That's really great advice. I think it's definitely so important to experiment with CAD software, as you were saying. And Sopiea, would you like to add any skills that you think are important in your line of work?
Well, considering that I'm in the manufacturing side of skincare, so if they want to actually fit the two between 3D printing and the manufacturing, I think it's best that you try and get a position in a small cosmetic manufacturing company. And the reason why I say it's small is, but when it's small, you can actually put your hands on many different processes, and that's how you can figure out what 3D printing can do for the cosmetic industry. And that's why I cosmetic, the 3D printing side, is because I was able to manage the production flow for the last 25 years. So they are the small manufacturing that manufacture bigger houses like Estée Lauder and L'Oreal and such, and they are host.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to turn it to Anne. Would you like to add any skills that you feel are important in this industry?
The last skills I would like add is safety, because on beauty industry, we have most of the time contact with the skin. And we discover on this landscape that some of the technology are very bad and some very good. So the skills, it's about safety, contact, migration. So have a contact with experts. Don't jump alone, because some of technology, without the post-treatment, you have monomer, which is very bad for the earth. So the liquid monomer without polymerization is very bad. So you need to process and to use all the process implement with the technology. No, don't jump in the middle and stop without the cleaning for liquid technology. So really, this point is key for your health. Sorry for my accent.
That answer is so great because safety is so important. And the last question before we move to audience is, what is your vision for the future of 3D printing in beauty? So Sopiea, I'll start off with you. Oh, you're on mute.
To do that. With the journey that we are, portable care in every home. Paradigm shift that's happening from something that's important. I would say I'm looking. So it can change our function. So I think
Okay, that is so great. I'm so excited to see that. So Brianne, I'll pass the question off to you. Do you have anything to add to that?
Definitely, I think since fashion has the opportunity of like making custom parts, it just seems like 3D printing will just give it that advantage to make things that are specific to certain fits and wearable things. And specifically like beauty and fashion, I think 3D printing has a unique place because fashion is also an art form. And so not only does 3D printing allow you to create, it allows you to create just like one of a kind, like sculptures and like pieces of art that you really can't make through any other means. And so, yeah, I just think also, in the future, like years, probably that will become more and more accessible to the average consumer, especially it's kind of already happening with like custom eyewear, insoles for your shoes, or like the AR and 3D scanning with, even like, I think there's like certain apps like Warby Parker, you can like scan your face and then it, gives you the glasses that look best on your face and things like that. So eventually like the products that we buy because of 3D technology, it may not just look like small, medium, large, but it will just be custom like your size. So that seems like just such an exciting thing. And then I also think the technology probably will also change even that more materials will be developed for, packaging, but also the makeup or the clothes and things themselves. And so, yeah, I think that there's such a bright future for this technology to be implemented, and it already is being implemented within beauty and makeup and fashion.
And I totally loved what you said about, the future of, 3D printing and everything, because even if something's not, maybe a material is not available today, but it might be available tomorrow. So, Anouk, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think already like some of the product applications that Brianne talked about, and I think overall like this panel, for example, got me really excited because we're talking about, for example, in my case, printing for the body, but then it can also be printing for the skin, right? Which is like just very specific. So I think, the more we can basically create machines that are a little bit more specific to these materials, that are more specific to use on the skin, the more possibilities that is opening up. So I'm super excited for them.
I feel like that's going to open up so many more opportunities in the fashion industry. And Anne, do you want to go next?
Yes, about the innovation in materials. It's huge. Today, we already use bioprinting to do some skins, and we simulate cream application. So this emerging new materials field is huge, and it's the technology in the landscape where we can innovate to do this augmented beauty, augmented body, and we have three main advantage. It's we can have unique part that can be durable, and it's customized. So each girl have got shape, or woman, man, unique. And this is the technology who fit completely with this new trend: durable, unique, personalized, customized.
That's really interesting. I love your take on the unique, durable, and customized, the three parts of this current industry. And one of the very popular questions from the audience is related to bioprinting, actually. So the question is anyone working on bioprinting, or is this widely used in the cosmetic industry today? So Brianne, could you start us off? Do you happen to know about this?
I personally do not have this, so I don't know how much I can speak on bioprinting, but I do think that yeah, it's so exciting and definitely has its applications, obviously, with you know, makeup and you know, things that we're putting on our bodies, you know. Yeah, so it's truly such an amazing thing.
Thanks, Brianne. And Sophia, since you work with skincare, do you have anything to add for this question?
I do. I actually hail from the biotech industry, so I actually heard about 3D printing around 2001, and that's when I believe Dr. Anthony Atala actually bioprinted a bladder successfully, and actually successfully implemented, or implemented the bladder, or implanted the bladder. Sorry. So that's when I was really interested, and that's when I became aware. But I know there's been a lot of advances in bioprinting and personalized medicine space. So there are many advances, but in particular for the beauty industry, I was very intrigued about it because you could actually bioprint skin and do testing of the creams and other materials on the skin rather than on the animals. So I believe that's already in process. So it's a very exciting space. A lot of things are happening. And I think even bioprinting skin bandage for wound healing. So I think that at the Wake, I forget the gentleman's name, the doctor's name, but at the Wake Forest for Institute for Regenerative Medicine, I think they have an Insight to 3D printer machine that they're working on that actually creates skin for burn victims, literally at the bedside. So it's very exciting what's happening in the medical printing space. Absolutely.
So interesting. I wasn't aware that bioprinting was being used for testing and for creating skin bandages. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Anne, do you happen to know about bioprinting in the cosmetic industry?
As I shared just before, we have already a team who develops skin, because we for many years we have Episkin Factory who create this skin for tests to replace animal tests since many years. But the skin is like a young skin, and when we have to evaluate a new cream for mature skin, they develop a model by bioprint, and they work with the people for burn skin and help the doctors and all the medical industry. And the conclusion is this model is the shape and the thickness and the physical property of mature skin to evaluate the cream and be very closer than the reality compared to the young skin done by Episkin. So for the future, of course, with the medical industry, we have plenty of a new opportunity to help people to augment the beauty.
Thank you, Anne. And Anouk, since you do have some experience with anatomy, do you happen to know if bioprinting is being used?
I haven't seen it being used in the cosmetics or the beauty industry. I do know a lot of, I'm in contact with a lot of the laboratories that are creating the artificial hearts. For example, a big lab in Tel Aviv. And I also know, for example, kidney, I think it is about 300K if you would have a transplant for kidneys. And I think if you 3D print it, it's 10K or 20K. So it's a really big reduction once this really starts to get off sort of in the impossibilities of that, because it will save a lot of people, for example, like liver or kidney transplants. It's a really beautiful field. I don't really know of a direct application for the cosmetics industry, other than the things that have been named of the skin.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anouk. And the next question that we have is, do you have any guidance on how to introduce 3D printing at a company? Is it better to make or buy printers to support in-house designs? And I'm going to go to Anne with this because I believe you brought this up earlier.
A guide. The question is a guide to deploy it at home, in-house?
They're asking how to introduce 3D printing at a company, and is it better to make or buy printers to support in-house designs?
So it's the first question is printer don't work alone. So you need to detect the talent internally in the company, because many of you maybe bought some very cheap, but it's not so easy to use. It's not like Macintosh or Apple. So the first point is really to empowering the people and detect the passionate people about the technology. And when you have the people on board, you can give many ways to use, but because of the price is cheap, it's FDM technology, easier way to jump on the technology. But take care about the time. If those people have so many work to do, and if you work with a team or on different factory who are already over the water, full of work, and it's not 1 hour per week. It's necessary. It's better to capitalize on one technical expert, and they will work for the different customer internally in the company, because of this using it's not accessible as we can listen on the newspaper on YouTube. It's not so easy. So buy a printer and use it internally, but human first, not machines. Machine, it's you can find anyway. It can be rent, buy, but human is competence, skills, and motivation. Passionate people, the key tips.
That's great. I really loved how you said humans first and then machines. Brianne, do you want to add to that?
I mean, I think that was like a perfect answer, because I 1000% agree with what Anne said. You can't just buy a printer and just be like, use it. Like you need that first like initial education and understanding about what it's going to take to use it well. And of course, the cheaper ones are going to be more finicky, break down more, and probably require more post-processing. So it also is going to depend on what you're using it for, how often you're considering using it. And that question is harder to answer, because it's kind of like a chicken or the egg scenario, where once you have it, you'll use it, but you don't have it now, so you don't know how much it's going to be used. And so I think like a good thing to do too is do like some sort of combination of having a printer in-house, but then also maybe outsourcing some of your projects. And then as you use the technology, just collect a lot of data and see exactly like, you know, whether or not it's more beneficial to have something in-house versus using a service bureau to achieve what it is exactly that you want to achieve. And if you find yourself using the service bureau more, then maybe you can buy another machine, and maybe at that point you're going to have to probably have somebody, a technician or somebody there to help with post-processing. Don't forget to consider the post-processing, learn about exactly what needs to be done to actually have the final part in your hand, because it really isn't just click of a button, the part comes off the machine and that's it. And as much as you can introduce it in like the most realistic way possible of like what's expected of the people using the machine and also the machine itself. So yeah, I pretty much just second everything that Anne said.
I think that's so great, especially the part you brought about expectations. Anouk, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. Same. You see an example is a lot of libraries. They think, or a makerspace, like a school might have wants to build a makerspace. They think that buying the machines, that's the makerspace, and says the talent needs to be there. So definitely, like one idea would be once a machine comes, that you do a workshop around it. So you invite like a specialist and anybody that might be able to be interested or working at that place. It can be an education center, school, or a library, or your business, right? Get them all together, do a really fun workshop with it to show everybody the possibilities, because it can have an application for somebody that doesn't know about it or otherwise not have been in any way in contact with it, right? It makes them think a little bit differently. So definitely once you get a machine, either like decide on a case study, so you can print something, or have a technician there, of course, to operate the machine for people who cannot operate it. But workshops are a really fun way to get more in contact with underneath each other, and also to give that kind of access to your company. Get excited about working with it.
Great, because honestly, I come from that background. Like, I'm a makerspace baby, and I'm lucky I had like really great professors. But I totally second everything you said about doing workshops and makerspaces and the library part. Sopiea, do you have anything to add?
Well, being a non-expert, definitely I agree with that. And that's why I kept going back to the 3D printers that I knew around me, the mechatronics engineer, the fluidics engineer, asking them time and time again, can we do it now? Can we do it now? So it was, I always left that up to the experts. So
Thank you, Sopiea. I think definitely collaboration is a huge part of the future of this industry. And kind of a follow-up to the bioprinting question we had earlier, one of the popular questions in the Q&A section right now is, how do you assess the growth of bioprinting, for example, with printing facial masks? So Anne, could you start us off, because I know that you had a bit to say about bioprinting.
So today we are at the very early stage of bioprinting, homemade, with the shape of you want, because there is only main reason. It's when you bioprint, it's in live, and that doesn't stay in the time. The conservatory of the product is not so easy. It's not like a plastic. So it's a question of using. After, when you bioprint, you need to be close to the consumer. And it's like organ. Do you see, since many years we speak about organ, but it's not a real organ. It's not functional. The new functional, it's really the beginning. But to be like vena for the blood, I saw now there is a but that means to have all the environment to be in line. So it's really the real bioprinting, which can be in life. It's not like a static bioprinting. So it's the beginning.
Definitely, I agree. Bioprinting is definitely in its very early stage, but it's very exciting to see how it will grow, especially with all the applications and benefits it can have. And Sophia, I would like to direct this question to you as well, because I know that you were talking about bioprinting earlier too. So how do you assess the growth of bioprinting?
It's been very rapid, very rapid. As far as back in 2001, we were able to grow cells by hand. It was much more meticulous, it's probably more precise, but we needed a way to look at how to scale that up. And a lot of doctors in the regenerative field have done that. So if you want to dig further into it, people can actually go look at Dr. Atala's work at the Wakefield, I believe it's the Wake Forest for Regenerative Medicine Institute. And he has all these post papers on the advances that he's been working on. So it's much further along than we actually even imagined. So it's fascinating. We're not there with full organs, but definitely with tissues. I think we're pretty much there. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks, Sophia. And this question is actually for you, Sophia. You mentioned the need for multi-material. There is multi-material for FDM machines today. Are you referring to the multi-material of cosmetic materials, or do you mind? They're asking if you can explain that more.
Well, materials that for 3D printing for this. 3D printing, we have, from my understanding, we have not touched upon the emulsions of immiscible blends of products. So in skincare products, we have oil and water phases that are not miscible. So that study is very nascent and is just beginning to happen. And Dr. Wan, I think it's Professor Wan or Dr. Wan of UC Davis, was actually able to circumvent that by actually building a microfluidic print head. And that's the same journey that we are. It's that printing for us to be able to create different complexities of skincare treatment products. So I hope that kind.
Thank you for expanding on that, Sophia. And the next question is, do you have an example of your favorite 3D printed application in your work? And Anouk, I'll direct this to you first.
That's actually a good question. Let me see. I mean, yeah, to be I want to do, I guess, you know, I can use multi-material. If I use an Object Connect 500, I can use hard versus soft TPU, everything. So other than like, yeah, maybe a really breathable material, I can pretty much do whatever I want, sort of, you know, depending on the company that I work with, or the machine that I work with, or the material that I work with. And there's also a lot of possibilities, especially the last like 5 years, to explore some kind of hybrid options as well. Even some like machines that have been reverse engineered in a lab, sort of, you know. So I think there's just for me, it's yeah, one big playground, sort of, you know, in all these possibilities that sort of.
Thank you for sharing that. Definitely the endless possibilities with 3D printing are so exciting. And Anne, do you have a favorite application of 3D printing in your work?
I just share the link with the picture and the video. It's a limited edition of Victor and Rolf Maison Parfum. It's a fragrance, and we design flowers like in fashion for dress. And the flowers are completely the result of the nature. So it's the only technology for manufacturing where we can copy the nature. Otherwise, this design is not possible with the other way of produce it. So it's my favorite.
Thank you, Anne. And the next question is for Anouk. They're asking, are your earrings 3D printed?
Oh, for who is that? I think both me and Anne have earrings. And mine are laser cut. And her earrings are 3D printed. She just told me in SLS.
Thank you. Those are both beautiful pairs of earrings. And the next question is actually a very interesting one. How can we use 3D printing to increase inclusion in STEM, beauty, and cosmetic industries? And Brianne, I'll direct this to you first.
How can we use 3D printing to, what was the question? What was it?
It was how can we use 3D printing to increase inclusion in STEM, beauty, and cosmetic industries?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you combine all three of them in STEM, you can have a lot more inclusion for women, probably, and attract, you know, girls in STEM to be potentially more interested in, you know, the types of things that can be developed and created through 3D printing. I actually taught in STEM as part of like my, like earlier on, like when I was in college, I taught like STEM classes in 3D printing and 3D modeling, and we actually developed a ton of classes that were kind of more targeted towards women and girls to be more inclusive. So we did like a jewelry class and a 3D printing class that, you know, focused on things that may be of more interest to girls to be more inclusive. So I think like specifically, which is like what this whole event is about, is like the combination of the beauty industry and 3D printing is like a really great place to, you know, start those types of initiatives.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And Sophia, do you have any takes on how to increase inclusion in STEM, beauty, and cosmetic industries?
Well, I didn't really think about it, but definitely the reason why I thought 3D printing would be a disruptive technology is especially because I have good friends that have hailed from Africa. Please look at 3D type of disruptive and that is happening in Africa now. So it's allowing more women, more young girls to actually have, it's no longer about the idea of being aid to Africa, but made in Africa, and allowing them to be proficient and self-sufficient. So in that respect, I kind of see the inclusion and the democratization on the global platform. And that's definitely happening right now. Thank you.
Oh, that is so great. So the next question we have is, they're asking, Brianne, do you have any specific programs you recommend being proficient in over others?
I think that the answer to that question is different for different people, especially because so many bigger CAD softwares are like so expensive. So a lot of them are not necessarily just easily accessible to anybody, but most of them have some sort of educational deal or like free trials, things like that. So specifically, like if you had access to all of them, like I would say to understand sort of just like the different workflows between basically the different types of 3D modeling. So for instance, in like Rhino, you have a lot of mathematical based, like I guess it's called like BREP modeling or like NURBS modeling, where no matter how much you scale your part, it's always going to be based on math. So all of your curves will translate. But then you have like mesh modeling, which is all triangles or quads, and that is like just like a whole different animal. More like organic modeling programs where you're like sculpting, you can make monsters, you can work in Maya, and then like end up working for Pixar. And then there's parametric modeling in SolidWorks, where you can actually make functional designs that have, hinges and springs, and you can 3D model entirely functional machines and assemblies. And I think like my advice from before would be, was kind of saying like, it's just good to have just a general knowledge of like the language that surrounds each of those different types of 3D modeling going into a 3D printing field, because you're probably going to be challenged with having to 3D print something from each of those different types of programs. So I do think it's like maybe just like, you know, listen to your heart and like be like, which one of these things is your favorite, and specialize in that. And if, you know, if you can only use Blender, Blender is a great place to, it almost like has like a way to do it all. Like Blender is such a great program and it's free. So, you know, if you feel overwhelmed because not only is it so much to learn, but you don't necessarily have access to everything, like that's definitely a program you should be in a lot. And like, it's just going to be the thing where like the one that you spend the most time in is probably your favorite, and it's probably going to be the one that you're best in, that you master. And then even if you don't have access to like all of them for whatever reason, it's just good to even just know what each of them kind of does and like what tools maybe are inside of it. You know, so the big ones are like Rhino, ZBrush, SolidWorks. Yeah, I don't know. Just there, and then there's also the ones that like all the Autodesk ones, Fusion 360, which I don't think it's free anymore. Maya, if you want to do like more animation stuff. There's just so many. And then on top of that, you know, there's all the softwares involved with that, like you put your 3D models into, like in order to 3D print them. So like file fixing softwares are also really good to learn about. So yeah, I think the list is sort of endless, but those are like the big ones. So just to know that, like what each of them is kind of used for and what industries use them, and then just have the one that is your favorite that you use all the time. That's like what I do. I don't know.
I think that's so helpful. I really like the way you explained the different kinds of modeling that's out there. Anouk, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think like other than like mechanics, software, I mean, you're not making boxes and all of that stuff. Again, work towards the skin and the body. You want to have more organic things. So you might actually want to look into more like things like maybe Blender and Maya for more sculpting around maybe the face, the body sort of, and also like ZBrush, which Brianne also named, like certain texturing, because maybe you want to have something that takes out like vitamins or puts it on your skin or some certain texture. So ZBrush can be really interesting for that sort of, you know. So yeah, again, a lot of pieces of software and a lot of applications. But yeah, for things if you're creating like patches on skin, you definitely want to look more to like more organic things, and also work a lot with scanning. So scanning maybe parts of your body. So a good scanner, Einstein, and you have a bunch of just walk around the body and you can scan body parts, for example. So that can also be an interesting thing to look into if you're working with skin and the body.
Thank you, Anouk, for talking about scanners too. And I think we have time for one last question before we end the panel. So this question is, what projects in the beauty industry are you most proud of so far? And Anne, I'll start with you.
Already share it. It's the fragrance fund. It's my favorite one because it was a long time journey. It's designed with a mix of ZBrush and Grasshopper of Reno. And this project, I love it because I spend with the teams a lot of time. So we are all proud. It's teamwork, amazing, with partner called AirPro. This company near Paris too, with the amazing team, and it's carbon technology, and we have electroplating for finishing and a varnish. So the finishing, it's amazing, shiny, no defect, and You know very well the technology, all of you, but the pixel, most of the time in metal or resin, you can see here we have a very good finishing because we have this electroplating very thick to have this touch, very cold touch as the metal, which is a very good perceived value when you have it in hand, and it's unique.
Okay, I think that kind of wraps us up our panel for today. I would like to thank all of our fantastic panelists for being here today. You were also inspiring, and I loved hearing everyone's background and their takes on 3D printing. I'm about to go learn ZBrush right after this. I would also like to thank everyone in the audience who came out today. I would also like to thank everyone who was involved in making this event possible. I would also like to thank all of our sponsors for sponsoring this wonderful event, like SME, Link3D, Matter Hackers, and all of our wonderful sponsors that are on the slide. Just some upcoming announcements. Women in 3D Printing is going to have another upcoming Meet the Stars event. The next event will be around construction, so make sure to look out for that. Also, Women in 3D Printing Next Gen has a wonderful mentorship program. If you're a student, you could be mentored by a leading professional in the 3D printing industry. So we're also taking applications for both mentors and mentees. If you're interested, scan the QR code on the slide or go to womenin3dprinting.com and fill out an application. And lastly, Women in 3D Printing also has a job board. So if you're looking to get into 3D printing or looking for a career change, make sure to check out the job board. And now that we're going to conclude the panel, we're now going to open up the floor for more networking. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for all the questions.